Alright, this is lesson 28, show the error analysis. So this lesson is really a lesson on how to take a test. Sometimes you're going to see problems like this on a test. And I want to make sure that you understand how to do this kind of problem. Because a lot of times students, they see something, they don't know how to do it. What happens when students see something, they don't get it? What are they going to do? Guess, or what ends up happening when they get frustrated?
They don't do it.
They give up. They don't do it, right? And I don't want you to give up. You're all smart. You all have a brain, and I think you could all have an A in my class. Okay, I really believe that. I don't hand out A's. You could all earn it. So, and in your junior year, you're going to take the SBAC test. So, this is a type of problem we're going to look at. So, and I'm also going to give these types of problems today that I'm going to show you today on future tests. So I want to show you how to do it correctly, okay? So this isn't really a math lesson. It's more like, how do I do this problem in math, okay? And it'll make more sense, okay? So here are the steps. Here are the questions that would be asked on this. What step is there in it? Is there an error? Describe what they did wrong or the student did wrong. 3, explain what you would do. And 4, what is the right answer? Okay, that's a question mark here. So, what is the right answer? All right. And again, the reason for this, and we're going to do this, it's going to take a lot more writing and work today. And the reason is not because it's busy work. I'm only giving you 4 problems to do today. 4 problems for homework. And we're going to do 2 of them in class, which means how many do you have for homework?
2.
2, right? So only 2 problems for homework. Does that mean it's going to be an easy night? No. Each problem is going to take a little while. It's going to be hard to do, okay? Because you're going to have to think about your thinking. You're going to have to think like, oh, what am I, Timmy?
You already knew.
Yeah. You're going to have to think about your thinking. So, anyways, that's why it's harder. So I'm going to show you how to do it if I were a math student so that I would get a successful grade, okay? So here we go. Number 1, sorry, it's not supposed to have all the answers up there, but here we go. On number 1, the math problem is going to look like this. They're going to say, this is a student's work, okay? So let's pretend this is a student. Let's say this person's name. Make up a name for me. Webster. Okay? Webster, okay? This is Webster's example. We don't know who Webster is, but they'll say, Webster did this problem. This is their work, okay? And then they're asking 4 questions. What step is there an error? Describe what they did wrong and explain what you would do. And then what is the right answer, okay? That seems like a lot of work, right? Take it a step at a time. So as a math student, I'm looking at this problem and I want to see what the directions are. It says solve, okay? So that means, what question do I ask? Oh, I need to figure out what's the answer for the letter, right? So we already know how to do this kind of problem, right? I just taught you. So then on your test, you're gonna look at this person's example, and you're like, okay, what did they do first? Oh, step 1, they subtracted 2 on both sides. Is that what I would do as a math student? Yeah, I would do that. So then I'm noticing, okay, and they use the subtraction property of equality. Did they write the right property here? Yeah, so that's good. We're just checking their work. Okay, so now we're going to continue on. They wrote positive 2 and negative 2 cancels out, leaving just 3x. They brought that down. They did that correctly. Okay, they brought their equal sign down. That looks good. And then negative 1 plus negative 2 is negative 3. Did they do this correct? Yeah, so step 1, did they do it correctly? I asked myself. Yeah, that's good. Step 2, what did they do next? Well, it looks like they divided by 3, right? They have a division sign here, right? So I want to make sure that they did that correctly. So, yeah, that looks right. They want to divide by 3 on the next part, so they're using the division property of equality, right? Dividing both sides by 3, so checking my work. 3 divided by 3 cancels out, leaving just x here. That's good. Negative 3 divided by 3. What's negative 3 divided by 3? They put, oh, is that the same thing as 1? No, so now I notice it should say negative here, right? But it doesn't. They have positive 1, right? So that's the step. So what would I do? Okay, so to answer question 1 on my homework and then on a test, this is what I would expect you to do, and I expect you to do on a test, is you're going to write down 1 and then you're going to answer the question. What step is there an error? You need to use complete sentences. You need to sound like you're writing formula, okay? Capital first letter, period at the end. So I would write the student made a mistake on step 3, right? That's all I need to write. Okay, so, sorry, going a little too fast here. Okay, that's all I'm doing. I'm answering question 1. What step is there an error? I'm writing the student made a mistake on step 3. Okay, is that true? Is that where the student made a mistake? Good, okay. The second question is saying, describe what they did wrong. Okay, so I have to think, what did they do wrong on step 3? Well, it looks like they divided by 3. That's correct, but then what's negative 3 divided by 3? It's supposed to be negative 1, okay? So on the next part, I would write down 2, and I would think about what did they do wrong, and I'm going to create a complete sentence. I'm going to say this student wrote that negative 3 divided by 3 is positive 1. Okay, is that true? Is it positive 1? No. Right? Does that make sense? Okay. Then the next thing they're going to do is explain what you would do. Okay, this part's the harder part. Okay, so now we're going to redo the problem correctly. So I'm going to write down 3. I'm going to take the original problem. We already know how to do this, so we're going to write 3x plus 2 is equal to negative 1. Okay, and then I would describe what I'm doing. Okay, so what am I doing on the first step? First, I would write the original problem, right? In order to do this correctly, I'd write the original problem. Okay, this is something you would write on your test. Okay, then you would do the next step. What would you guys do next, kids? Okay, so we're going to subtract 2 on both sides. Okay, and then I'm going to write, then I would subtract 2. On both sides. Okay. And I would get this new answer of 3x is equal to negative 3, okay? See, that's a complete sentence. What am I going to do after I subtract 2 on both sides? Divide by 3 on both sides, right? So after, I would subtract or divide both sides by 3, okay? And as I'm doing this, I'm writing complete sentences out, right? Slow. Let's see if I can pick this up a little bit. Okay, and then I'm going to write my final answer, x is equal to negative 1, and then I would write my final answer is x is equal to negative 1. Notice how I'm using the words divide by. Am I using the division sign in my writing? No. Notice how I'm writing down negative, right? I'm writing the actual words. So it's really important that we're using the academic language. It's really important that you're explaining a complete sentence. It's really important that you're not using slang, okay? I will be grading these on a test. This problem right here is worth 5 test points on my test, okay? And why are we doing this? Because you're testing to see if the student did it correctly. There's on a test, I'm saying if you understand the concept. If you're able to grade someone else, then you probably know what you're doing, okay? So clearly the student did it wrong, okay? I need you to explain what you're doing. I need you to think about what you're doing. And believe me, it's going to be hard, okay? But what you're doing right now is you're thinking about thinking. You're thinking, what am I doing? And you're actually writing it. And that's a really important skill. It's going to help you be smarter in the long run, okay? Does this look hard? Raise your hand if this looks hard. Okay? It is hard. I would agree that this is harder than what we do every day. Is this harder than what we do every day?
Yes.
Yeah, it is, okay? But I still need us to know how to do it, okay? So before we write this down, let's have you discuss with your neighbor. Let's have 1 solid 2s about the answers for numbers 1 and 2. Oh, and then question 4, it says, what is the right answer? Did I put the right answer down?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's already assumed, so I know that's there, okay? So let's have 1 solid 2s about how we did question 1 and 2. How did we figure that out? Explain 1s. How do we go through all the steps, like to make sure that they did it correctly, and how did I write the complete sentences? And then switch to 2s. 2s would explain how did I solve the problem correctly and explain it, okay? The goal of today is explaining a lot, okay? You need to be able to do that, all right? So I'm going to give you a moment to talk. And then we'll write. Ready, set, go. Okay, number 2, okay? So the example number 2 is solve for y. The student wrote a is equal to x plus y over 2. And then they have step 1, 2, and 3. So I want you to look through here, and then I want you to discuss with your neighbor where did they make a mistake, step 1, 2, or 3. Okay? Where did the student make their biggest mistake or their first mistake? Step 1, 2, or 3. Discuss with your neighbor, and then I'm going to take a vote in the class. Okay, go. And identify and also tell your neighbor why it's a mistake. Sometimes they do, yeah. Okay. Where did they... okay, so we have 3 steps. Raise your hand if you think the student made a mistake on step 1. I'm just taking a vote. Nice and nice so I know. Okay, raise your hand if you think the student made a mistake on step 2. Okay. Raise your hand if you think the student made a mistake on step 3. Okay, step 1, people. Someone who thinks it's step 1, raise your hand and tell me why. Marky.
Because you weren't supposed to subtract x yet. You were supposed to multiply 2 and final on a
Okay. But it's SADMAP. Isn't it SADMAP? Aren't you supposed to subtract x? I'm just trying to challenge you. Okay, step 2, people. Raise your hand if you said it's step 2 and why. I only had people here. Yeah, Nick.
It says like y divided by 2 by multiplication. It should be like not following the set map.
You don't think they're following SADMAP? Okay. Yep. Are you a step 2 person? Okay, why? Okay, but I thought it's SADMAP. They subtracted first, subtraction, and then did they do any addition signs? Yeah. No addition. Any division signs? No. Any multiply signs? Or division signs? Yeah, you have to do the opposite, divide, multiply by 2. So is it step 2? All right, step 3, people, raise your hand if you says step 3. Yep, why?
Because they forgot to put the y on the left side.
Oh, okay, so they need a step 4 is what you're saying. But is step 3 necessarily correct? Is there step 3? Does it look good? So which one is it? Step 1, 2, or 3? It's step 1, right? Step 3 is also correct. I'm going to say step 3 is not the worst answer, though. This isn't totally incorrect, but it's supposed to be what property we're supposed to apply at the end? Symmetric property, right? Okay. But is it still, if they did symmetric property, where did they first make a mistake? Step 1. Where did they first make a mistake? Step 1, okay. Why? A question, the whole numerator has what around it, and the whole denominator has what around it always? Parentheses, right? So this whole numerator has parentheses, and so does this whole denominator, right? So when do parentheses happen in SADMAP? When? Last, good. So are we going to subtract x first? No. Okay, so turn to your neighbor, tell them how would you answer step 1, or the first question. What step is there an error? Turn to your neighbor and tell them a complete sentence answer. In a complete sentence, make sure you're using complete sentence, okay? So I would think to say something like, the student made a mistake. Okay? Practice it, right? Okay, good. So we all know it's step 1. So I would write down on my paper, we're doing this together. The student made a mistake or an error on step or on the first step, okay? Okay? Your answer doesn't have to look perfectly like mine. It just needs to look like mine, okay? Does that make sense? Okay, good. 2. The second question says describe what they did wrong. I'll give you a moment to catch up here. 2, what do they describe what they did wrong here? Yeah.
They did SADNet wrong. They subtracted parentheses before they did anything else. They went through SADNet just so it wasn't around.
Oh, okay, good. So they subtracted inside the parentheses before dividing, right? What are you supposed to do first? Divide first, right? So give me a sentence. Give me a complete sentence.
The student did not divide. He subtracted within the parentheses first.
Okay, good. Excellent. So something like that. Let's have you all write your sentence out, and I'll show you my sentence. Write a sentence out for number 2. Describe what the student did. So in number 2, this is what I have. The student subtracted x instead of multiplying by 2. Right? Or 2 on both sides. Oh, wow. Went too fast here. Okay. So your answers don't have to look exactly like mine, but they need to communicate the same thing, okay? But notice how I'm using words like subtracted, you see? I'm using multiply. I'm not just putting a times sign there. Yeah. I did?
Yeah.
Oh, I forgot to put a T. Thank you. The student subtracted x instead of multiplying 2 on both sides, okay? Okay, so next thing is explain what you would do, okay? This is the harder part. You have to now redo the problem, right? So you're going to take the original problem. I want you to copy it down here, okay? So I'm copying the original problem on my paper, and I want you to do it correctly now, okay? So the original problem doesn't have the parentheses, actually. I'm going to erase those parentheses. All right? And what I'd like you to do on your first sentence is always start with this this prefix or this set of words. In order to do this correctly, I would first, okay? Yeah, because that's the goal, right? Solve for y. Yeah. Okay, so now you're doing this by yourself. I'm going to give you about 5 to 6 minutes. Remember, you're working out the problem, and then think about each step. What did you do? In order to do this correctly first, I would. And then what did Marky say? What should you do first? Multiply by 2, and then after you multiply by 2, let's discuss this. What would you do?
Then you would bring your second down, and then you would subtract x from this.
Okay, good. So that's kind of like the idea. I want you to do this by yourself. You're going to write this out correctly and completely. Please take your time to do it correctly. This is all we're doing today, okay? This is the last problem before homework starts. Sentence. I'll take a volunteer for first sentence. Yeah. No, I need you to use a complete sentence. In order to correctly... Or to do this correctly, I would first, okay?
In order to do this correctly, I would first multiply 2 on both sides.
Okay, good. I would first multiply 2 on both sides. Or a better way I would add on top of that, I would say, in order to do this correctly, I would first multiply 2 on both sides by using the multiplication property of equality. Okay? So you're using that as the second sentence. Okay, third sentence. What would you do next? Are we done? No, what's a good third sentence? Did the student make a second mistake? Yeah, what was the second mistake that wasn't like a big deal, but it's kind of a big deal? Okay, good. So, third sentence, yep.
After that, I would use the symmetric property and put the y on the right side, or the left side.
Okay, good. So, third, I would use a symmetric property to put the y on the left side, equaling to the answer. Okay, and the last sentence, what would you do? One last sentence. Yeah, who's saying that? Okay, Casey. Okay, good. Is that the final answer?
Yep.
Yep. Y is equal to 2a minus x. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay, so this is a 5-point problem, so that takes a while, right? So we've done a couple problems now on your homework, so you're going to take the rest of the period to do the rest of them. Number 3 is an even harder one of these multiple step problems. Okay? I want you to do it by yourself. I want you to try to figure out the problem that they messed up on by yourself, and then check with your neighbor to make sure you have the right step, and then start working it out. You do not need to write the original problem out. Okay? Not today, because the original problem is wrong. Okay? Oh, I have one more comment to make. Joseph asked, is it sometimes true that the student didn't make a mistake? This is Joseph right here. Okay? Is it true that sometimes students don't make mistakes on these examples? Yes, so you need to be really sure. I could give you a problem and give you all these questions, and it'll be 5 points, and it'll be like, where did the student make a mistake? And the student may have not made a mistake. It may be perfect. Okay? So you need to be able to identify if there is a problem and make a judgment on that. Yeah?
What do we write
If they didn't make a mistake, you'd say this problem is done correctly. There is no mistake. Okay? That's what I would write. But tonight's homework, there are mistakes on the next 2 problems. Okay? All right, that concludes the lesson.